Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on Monday for this LinkedIn Live. And I'm super excited today. Meenakshi and I are excited to talk about, I think this is our first LinkedIn Live for the conference, isn't it? Oh my gosh, so exciting. So you've probably seen us posting lots of stuff, but before we get into that, I'll do just quick some intros. So I'm Tiffany Castagno. I'm CEO and founder of Zephyr, which is an HR consultancy based in Pittsburgh. And I partner with small to medium businesses, helping them build their infrastructures, teams, and cultures across the US. And I'm joined by my partner, Meenakshi Iyer. I'll allow her to introduce herself as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tiffany. And this is wonderful to be here with everyone. My name is Meenakshi Iyer, and I'm the founder and principal of North Star Solutions and Services, which is a boutique, future of work-oriented virtual coaching, training, and consulting practice. And I'm physically located in Virginia, and I have the privilege of serving clients globally. I focus on partnering with mid-career technology leaders, women in tech, and folks who speak English as an additional language in helping them become impactful people and change leaders. And Tiffany and I, we met online, and we have done, middle of 2020, so it's about 3 years now, and we've done some incredible collaborative work together. And I always say that we are evidence of what the future of work looks like.
We are. Thank you, Meenakshi. And speaking of the future of work, we are joined by the wonderful Brandi Olson. Brandi is going to be our keynote speaker at the conference, and you'll hear more about the conference shortly. But before we do that, let us introduce you to this wonderful woman. Brandi is CEO and Chief Learning Officer of Real Work Done and author of Real Flow. She's on a mission to help leaders foster cultures where people are learning together faster and better and supporting them and leading change the right way. Things that we all, as this trio here on this LinkedIn Live, have in common. So as I mentioned, Brandi's going to be joining us as a keynote speaker. Thank you so much for graciously offering your time for this. And I'll allow you to tell the folks a little bit more about you and your work and helping people lead change.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's absolutely a delight to be part of the conference and to be part of the conversation this morning. You did a great job giving my formal bio and intro, but I think the thing that is so important that I wind up saying often when I get to introduce myself is that I have this deep core belief that reality is the only place that good work happens. And we have an abundance of good and important work that needs to be done in the world, both in the organizations we lead and in the communities we're part of. And we can't afford to waste time being ineffective in the ways that we work. And so I am through and through a pragmatic optimist, and that I have such great belief and hope in our potential of what we're capable of doing together. And I'm so pragmatic in the ways that we have to get it done. And so I'm excited to be part of this conversation. How we do good work together, how we get real work done is everything, right? And so I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to create spaces where we can all be collectively learning together.
So beautifully said. I'm even more jazzed up now for this keynote. That is, one of the things that Meenakshi and I love is, and that we share and celebrate in our own partnership, whether it's the conference, as I hit my computer, the conference or other things. I'm so excited. But it's the values, it's the human potential. It's how do we get things done in a better way, a more agile way, but that also meets people in a human space at the intersection of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so that was an easy sell for us in terms of having you come and join us at this conference, because it's been so evident. You talked about the pragmatic way, but there's also a values-driven and very human-centric approach that you have. We both jazz out on change too. And so those things we felt like just made you such a great fit for the conference, for the impact that we've seen over time for this conference. And I guess, I'll open it up if Meenakshi has anything else she wants to add, because I feel like I'm just going to keep blubbering all over the place here. I'm so
excited. Thank you, Tiffany. And, I was just thinking that I've had the privilege of meeting both of you in person separately. And so I think I'm waiting for the day when the three of us can meet together in person.
Mhm.
And that would be fantastic. I met Brandi, I think, about a couple of years ago through another common friend, Anjali Leon, through the Women in Agile community. That's how we met. And I've been following Brandi's work since then. And when the book came out in October of last year, we had a couple of conversations about the book, about the whole process. And then I had the pleasure of meeting Brandi in person in November in Minneapolis. Yes. And so I've just been absolutely taken in by your approach, Brandi, and like Tiffany, like you said, the human-centered piece, the pragmatic piece. And also, I think one of the things, Brandi, you often talk about is how can we bring humanity back into the world of work and world of business, and how well-being and a company doing well from a financial standpoint, how these two are really linked, and it's not a case of one or the other. And I know that that's something that you often talk about. So that to me is key. And I think in the context of our conference, and this is something that we've done, Tiffany and I have done together for the last 2 years. So this is our third year partnering together for this Future of Work conference. And given the topic and everything. Yeah.
I was just going to jump in because you said something actually that I think is so important to name even more clearly. Is a lot of times when we have conversations about how to be human at work or well-being, or even how to stop and avoid burnout, we have those conversations as they're like things over here, and they're important conversations to have because we happen to be human and they impact us, right? But they're also the path towards better companies and higher performance. And one of the things that I think is so important when we have these conversations is to say they're not just conversations to have over here. We need to be talking about the ways that we work together in the same dialogue as we're having conversations about business strategy and investments, and how we measure our success and our outcomes and our quarterly goals and what it looks like to sustain high performance. That they're not separate conversations related just because we happen to be people, but in fact, once we start having them as the same conversation, we will unlock a tremendously more significant potential and path forward.
So well said. Absolutely.
Yeah. I love the unlocking. There's something that for me, like internally unlocks when we talk about unlocking, because it's so related to unlocking human potential. And I think one of the reasons you made such a good point, Brandi, that we kind of decouple who we are as people, business objectives, is because people don't know how to talk about it. They're not sure, they're maybe ill-equipped on how to do that, but that can in and of itself lead to burnout, because we're doing all the things over here, they're siloed, they're not put together, and then people are lost trying to figure it out with either lack of tools, lack of support, whatever that may be. And they are burning out at very rapid rates, which is why we want to be a part of the solution. And we believe that together is better. As a community, we all share that as a value. So tackling this burnout piece is a reason why we wanted to have this. And we were so excited to see that this was a topic. I wish it wasn't a topic, right? Because people are burning out at such high rates, but to really be pragmatic about it, to offer solutions and things that are tangible. And we've been very intentional about doing this outside of the core International Women's Day, because it's such a hot topic, because people need sustainable tools to be able to move forward. And that's really what we're looking to provide people with from this conference. What, I guess, Brandi, from your perspective, I guess maybe why did you say yes in the first place to us? Like, were you like, I guess I can indulge these ladies over here? But I think we heard a preview of that. But what else made you say yes to this offer that we're so excited that you did?
I think the real yes, or the reason that I wanted to be part of this and was so honored by the invitation and then quickly became so invested in the outcome, is because of what you just said, Tiffany, that it's not just about talking about challenges in the workplace or challenges that women experience or we all are impacted by, but the conference is really focused on doing real work. And how do you learn better through doing work together. And I think so often these are things we can talk about ad nauseum and we can reflect on. But the thing that I have seen over and over and over through the many years of working with such a wide variety of companies is that culture is changed by doing real work together. Teams grow in their ability to trust each other and become high-performing teams by doing real work. We learn and do better experientially. And so while we can talk about the ingredients of a good workplace culture, we can talk about what it looks like to have well-being at work, we can talk about the theory of all of this. If we can't apply that quickly to the ways that we actually show up and work through tasks and goals and challenges and problems, we're never going to learn what works better. So one of the things that I love so much about the way that the conference is designed is that collective focus on, but what does this look like in reality? And how can we take something that perhaps we all have an experience of and look at it through a variety of lenses and angles, really make it visceral and pragmatic and something that we can actually take and perhaps apply same day and start to use in reality to learn and do better going forward. And I think that's often a missing link in a lot of conferences and events, is that real applicability to how does this change how I show up today and tomorrow.
I'm just I'm going to jump in here because I'm so glad you said that because ever since we started collaborating on this, that has been one of our main goals, is to be exactly what you said. For us, it's we've all been to events and conferences where people come talk. Some talk, some listen, and then we go back to our old worlds, right? So there's no real value in doing that. So for us, it's important that we create these opportunities for tangible change that people can, and make it accessible. Right? So when we talk about, like, the title of the conference is Burnout, the Silent Pandemic, creating sustainable recovery by embracing equity. So we're bringing in the theme of the International Women's Day for this year, which is Embrace Equity. And then burnout is something that we have, all of us I know on this call can attest to that. We've all experienced it, and we're seeing others around us experience it. And I think between Tiffany and I, we have our respective focus areas that also intersect. So for me, I'm seeing in my coaching conversations a lot of middle managers, that's who I focus on, and women in tech. And these are groups that I have found are more disproportionately affected by burnout. And I know Tiffany comes from HR, and Tiffany, I'm going to let you speak to that. But so we are seeing that there is enough that needs to be done about this. And given that our focus is helping people unpack this, like you said, and also gain a different perspective, plus learn some tools and strategies that they can apply right away. And so for us, this is our objective is always to make whatever topic that we take, help people. We participate in the learning, right? So we are not here saying, hey, we are the experts, we know everything, come listen to us. We're not saying that. And that's why we pride ourselves in bringing people like yourselves, Brandi, to the conversation, so that we all learn from one another and really model that. Like, how can we break things down, and how can we just start working on them, one by one, and we don't have to engage with the whole thing at the same time. So I love how you showcase that, and I love that was one of your main reasons to join us and say yes to us. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Me too. And what struck me too is when you use the word visceral. I've always loved that word. I don't know why, but we often apply it to negative connotations. When you talked about it in this positive sense, I think it's demonstrative of our values and how we view work and the future of work, how we pull in human-centric pieces. But I love the positivity that you put on that. And we can have this great visceral reaction to making good change. And that just like is sitting in my heart, but like in such a good way. And I think, as we look at burnout, HR professionals, like I hate sharing this stat because 90+% of us are burned out. I have been through 3 rounds of it myself for various reasons. And honestly, that's 3 rounds in the last 3 years. I was having this epiphany over the weekend that my husband and I were talking about work and the future of work, and just different things. They happened to come up, and I was like, you know what? In reflecting about burnout, I was like, these were like 3 rounds, but that's in the last 3 years. And I started to think about a few other times in my life where this happened. And so when we have these experiences, you talked about making it experiential. I think that it's such an impact, and that can be good or bad. As HR folks, we've had like all these COVID regulations coming on. I know that was when I hit like my first round of burnout in 2020. In this last 3 years, like, whoa, pump the brakes. What is happening? I know none of us asked for this, but I had no tools to really deal with it because none of us had seen this before. There were decisions that had to get made very quickly, different levels of decisions, all these offsites. And I was like, whoa, stop the ride. I want off. I need a sabbatical. And that's what I did. But it's really difficult when you are tasked with being the person who becomes the coach and the counselor and the person who's helping you navigate all the laws that come down way too fast. And employers, okay, I won't get on that soapbox, but it's a challenge. And then we wonder why people are faced with that on top of if they're not supported by their leadership or their organization. AP, for instance, is vastly underutilized and always has been. So, we look at all these reasons that people may be burnt out, and it's just the time is now to have this conversation. I'm seeing it crop up more. I'm sure we all are in our social media feeds and the news. And so I'm really proud to be tackling this with you all and our participants as well. Which kind of brings me to a question, Brandi. Can you talk a little bit about your focus for your segment? I think you've given us a little preview here again, but what do you want the focus to be? What are you hoping that folks will take away from your keynote?
Well, there's so many different ways that we can look at the challenges that we experience burnout from. And oftentimes we look at it from an individual lens because we experience burnout individually in our own experience, in our own bodies, in our own brains, right? We experience it individually. And I've certainly been there too, Tiffany, in the last couple of years with experiencing that burnout, which, the World Health Organization really defines as an energy challenge, right? Depletions of energy and exhaustion and emotional energy. And then that translates to impacting our cognitive abilities and the ways that we manage things around us. So much there. So we often look at burnout as an individual problem because it shows up individually and we experience it individually. And that's really important. But in my work of organizational design and working with leaders around how do we design organizations, I get really interested in the collective and the communal ingredients that contribute to burnout. There's this adage that's often attributed to Edward Deming, although it's not actually his quote, that says your system is designed to produce the results you're getting, essentially. That whatever results are coming is because your organizational system is designed to produce those exact results. And so when we look at organizations that are filled with people who are experiencing burnout or the impact of overwork or the impact of, the collective experience of a pandemic, well, burnout isn't solely caused by work experiences. If you're working in an environment that is continuing to result in people experiencing burnout, we have to look at what about that ecosystem is causing it. And how then, as leaders, do we need to engage to design organizations, design and choose the way we invest and the way our strategy flows through our companies? How do we design organizations that stop burning people out? Because if you're the leader looking at an organization that's experiencing a lot of burnout, you're probably experiencing high turnover. You're probably also experiencing something that's incredibly devastating to the collective outcomes we're capable of, which is what happens when people are experiencing burnout and they stay. They don't leave and go to another job, but they stay. There's a recent study done in the state of burnout for 2022 that reported that people who are experiencing burnout report that they're 30 to 40% less focused and productive on their work. And so that's a huge collective impact. So if you're that leader or you're part of an organization saying, okay, well, what do we do about this? That's who I want to talk to. And those are the conversations that I really want to be having, because it is in fact possible to design organizations that are capable of really incredible outcomes without burning people out, without causing human suffering. And those are the organizations that I think are going to be thriving over the next few years, the next few decades. And we tend to think that well-being and high performance wind up being on opposite ends of the spectrum. And that if you want high performance, it's going to come at the cost of well-being. And if you want well-being, you'll inevitably have to lower your expectations or accept less. And the reality is kind of as far from the truth of that as possible. In fact, well-being and high performance are inextricably linked. And if you really want high performance that's lasting and game-changing, you have to look at well-being as well. And caring for our well-being doesn't mean that we need to lower our expectations or accept lower quality or lower our standards for ourselves. It means we actually need to look at what our expectations are, how we're choosing the work that we're doing and the way that we're working, so that we can have high well-being and high performance. So that's what I'm going to be talking about at the conference. We're going to look at it from that lens of what does it look like to design organizations that are high performing and foster well-being, don't cause human suffering, don't cause burnout, because that's what I think more leaders need to be paying attention to. And so I'll bring that lens. We'll have that conversation. We'll all share our own collective wisdom about our experiences with that. And I'll share some of the really compelling research that helps us understand what it looks like to design those kinds of organizations.
So exciting. We're designing possibilities. My favorite things. I love it. And something I want to hear what Meenakshi would like to add too, but I just want to share quickly that when you talked about the fact that we don't have to lower our expectations, that there can be shared expectations, that we don't have to kind of accept less than. I had a manager tell me at one point that my expectations were too high. And I'm like, but this is what I expect out of my work environment. And meanwhile, I'm running all around doing all the things. And that's very denting to the person, right? When we talk about human possibilities and unlocking something, what that effectively did is shut me down as a person. Like, well, why am I giving this my all? I'm still going to do a great job, but at the same time, it doesn't exactly inspire your folks to be very high achievers and high performers. When, so it's that language and the intentional design.
Well, and there's a lot of nuance there, right? So one of the things that I write a lot about is when we talk about high performance, when we talk about expectations, what do we actually mean? Is the expectation that we are just constantly busy all the time? Do we equate high performance with busyness? Do we equate high performance with this short-term burst? But if we fizzle out, where does that fit in? And so in order to really understand what we're talking about and what we're aiming for, there is a lot of nuance, right? If we're talking about high performance, we need to talk about results and outcomes. And that is oftentimes where we can start to shift and realize maybe some of our expectations are misplaced, because some of our expectations are about being high output creators, and we're not necessarily getting the outcomes that we need or that we want. So we might have to shift our expectations. We might need to redefine them. We might need to be a whole lot more clear about what it means. But we most certainly don't need to throw them out the window. We don't need to lower them. And we don't need to walk away from our human potential and what we're actually capable of in order to have well-being. Again, those things aren't mutually exclusive. And in order to lead in the ways that we need to see leadership, we need leaders, and I use that word very broadly. We need people to show up as leaders who can sustain the work over the long haul, because the challenges we have to solve are complex and the opportunities we have are unknown. right, are immense. So we need leaders who can show up and sustain their way of working. We don't need people who come in hot, burn out fast, and then are gone from the conversation. We need to bring really nuanced context and understanding to these conversations so that we can be really, really clear about what's the goal that we're after.
That ties very. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that, and I feel like this in itself was such a mini keynote, and I'm enjoying listening to you, Brandi. And I think that what you said about, first of all, that leaders at all levels, right? So and that speaks personally to me, because I believe that. I believe in self-leadership, and I think that leaders have it's an act, right? It's action. It's not a title. It's a verb. It's not a noun. So so each of us has the potential within us to show up as leaders, and we don't have to wait for others to designate as one. And so the conversation that the topics that you're touching on in your keynote, I think, will be so relevant to all of us, regardless of where we are in terms of hierarchy within an organization. And I think the second thing that really struck me is the sustainability piece that you talked about. And I feel that it is connected with the other goal that we have for our work, Tiffany and I, that we do in this conference, is highlighting the role of women in the workplace, and how the odds are stacked up against us, pretty much regardless of geography or culture, right? So, and there's enough evidence, more than enough evidence, that women are among the disproportionately affected groups when it comes to burnout, and there's that itself, I think, is a whole other conversation, right? So I'm thinking that amongst the women professionals amongst our attendees will stand to gain so much as they're able to also connect the systemic gender inequities that they have to deal with, connect that with the insights that you will share, and focus on sustainability as they look at how to prevent and recover from and navigate burnout. So those are some points of value that I'm already seeing in what you shared. So thank you.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about the conference and the connection to International Women's Day. And one of the things that's been on my mind as we've been having this conversation is the power of collective attention. And that, well, women's experience of leadership and in the workplace is a conversation to have every day of the year. The focus that comes from International Women's Day, where we all turn our attention to observing, paying attention, and learning together, I think is incredibly powerful. And the opportunity, I would say, for anybody thinking about attending, even coming with colleagues and attending with colleagues, the collective attention, the shared experience, the shared language that one gains, that has a really significant, long-lasting impact in ways that we can't always predict. And so I think it's so powerful to time this conference, to have this conference as part of the International Women's Day collective effort, because it is just that, it is collective effort, and allows us to have shared focus and shared attention. And we don't always know that, we can't always quantify the outcome or the impact of that, but it's significant. And just because we can't quantify it doesn't mean it's not there and having a really strong, powerful ripple effect. This is another reason why I'm really excited to be part of the conference, and that this conference is happening in connection with International Women's Day, because when we start to all pay attention to some of the same things, we can start to see the ways that our system needs to change. Because systems that benefit some and oppress others, whether they're in our communities, in our world, our economies, and in our workplaces, they thrive when we don't see them, and they thrive when our attention is fractured and our focus is fractured. But when we can start having shared focus and shared attention and seeing some of those systems and the inequitable outcomes that are created, then we can change them. And we have to look together at, we can see it, and then see those places where we can start shifting and changing and creating a new ecosystem. So I'm just really energized and really excited to think about what might be possible through that shared collective attention that's going to be coming up as we get ready for International Women's Day, and then all of the events all over the world that will be part of that in the month of March.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to say this one thing, and I'll turn it back to Tiffany, is the timing of the event, right? And Tiffany and I talked about this, and March 8th is International Women's Day, and there's tons of events that individuals and companies organize, and then I almost feel like by the even end of the month, forget end of the year, we are kind of back to our familiar ways of working, right?
Mm-hmm.
So holding this exactly 1 week after International Women's Day for us is our way of saying, hey, we need to have this conversation not longer than 1 day. And this affects women, and it affects a lot of other traditionally underserved groups in work environments. And so this is our way of calling our attention to that past the day. But we still hold on to the connection with International Women's Day. And I think you beautifully articulated the purpose of doing that, Brandi. So thank you.
I love that. I love what you both shared. And there's just such strength in the power of community, and no shade to people who don't identify as women, but there is something very powerful and magical that comes out of women being together as a collective. And it is, you talked about the energy and how World Health Organization describes burnout. And there's an energy that comes from all of us being together, looking to, kind of break up those fractures that we're seeing or make them whole again, and really identify where are the gaps? How do we help each other? And support just keeps coming up. It keeps emerging as a theme because not everyone has that. And part of that is, as Meenakshi said, our self-leadership. Last year, we talked about kind of, being able to self-promote and put yourself out there, because we know that women we have to shine the light on ourselves. And that's been a lot of what we have aspired to do as partners in this conference, is really helping people stand out and stand up and shine, or what I call permission to live out loud, because we don't have to live in the shadows of burnout. We can live, forward and really being, excited about our future. And the reality here is that the workforce has shifted tremendously. I know that every single one of us is having this conversation day over day, week over week. And COVID shifted that for us. In some ways, we had this beautiful opportunity to pause. But what I've seen is that people are rushing right back, and everything is just at this height again. And it's creating this, for me, it has created a lot of anxiety and trying to just navigate. Hey, Solomon, thanks for joining us. And it's been, a little bit intense. I think it's been very intense to try to, navigate all of those things together. But it has forever shifted work. And so part of the conversation we want to have in our panel is, navigating even the virtual hybrid world. Organizations are doing all different sorts of things, and no two companies look alike, but figuring that out for yourself and that organizational design that you talked about, it has to be a part of it for sustainability. And the other thing I'll add, and then I'll turn it over to both or one of you, whoever wants to go, is that the accessibility piece of this is so important for Meenakshi and I, and for our participants. It is something that is a non-negotiable, making sure that our speakers are paid, making sure that people see that as an investment in themselves, not just let me hop on Zoom because it is a virtual conference and get all the learnings and then I go back. No, we want it to be applicable, but we want it to be at a price point that is accessible to people, so they can use their professional credits and be supported by their employers. So they can, even if you're coming out of your own pocket with it, that it's at a price point that is sustainable for you too. And we want people to look at it as an investment in yourself, because it is. You're not any good to anybody if you're burning the candle at both ends. We got to fill our cups. And so to that, I will yield the floor to one of you lovely ladies.
Well, so I was thinking as you were talking about my 7-year-old daughter. So, and she happens to be home from school today because all the reasons. It's a big pick the reason your kids are still not in school on a regular basis. Anyone out there who's a parent. She's home from school today, and she knows that I'm having this interview right now. So she's, I think, playing kindly with her Legos. But earlier today, when I went downstairs for a break, she said, I solved it. I didn't need anybody to tell me what to do. Very interested. And she goes, so I was getting some pasta and I spilled it all over the floor. But you see that colander? I just picked it all up and I rinsed it off and then I cooked it or like reheated it in the microwave. And she goes, I didn't need Dad to tell me what to do. I didn't need anybody to tell me what to do. I figured out how to solve it. She was so very proud of herself that she had gotten her own snack and then had this, what I can only imagine to be like a moment of being incredibly overwhelmed as pasta, as she describes it, went all over the floor. And then the ability to like take some agency and solve the problem and figure out a solution that worked for her. Just clean out the pasta that was all over the floor and then eat it. But I like in all of this conversation, I think about, not just our peers, those of us who are in our careers and working and trying to figure all of this out, but what kind of messages we communicate and we create for young people and the leaders who really are growing up in our midst and going to be carrying on this work. And so it comes to mind. I think about that story and I think about my daughter, and I want her to have that sense of agency, the same sense of agency when you talk about self-leadership that we all need to have, because many of us maybe didn't always experience that encouragement to have that kind of self-leadership every step of the way, and how critical that is. And how, again, when we shine these bright lights on places and people who are leading and trying to figure this out and create more equitable workplaces and more sustainable paths forward, we're doing it not just for ourselves, but for the kids, right, who are watching us and paying a lot of attention to how we respond to the challenges that we experience that are in our midst. So I think that's exciting too, right? To create that connection and hopefully, whether it's through your, with your own children or young people that we mentor and we have relationships with, help them grow up into a workplace and an environment where burnout is not just the inevitable story that we all have, right? Where it's not just this cycle that we're constantly battling, but perhaps where they're able to find totally better ways forward, and we're able to create something that's really remarkably different, that feels sometimes at odds with reality. But I think that's that like optimistic pragmatism that we all have, that imagining a possibility that is quite possible, and we keep working towards it even when sometimes it's a struggle, right? And sometimes it's hard.
I loved how you wove in that story about your daughter, Brandi, and that's so true, right? And that sense of agency, and that's something that we all have the inherent ability to. We all have it, and regardless of age or circumstance, right? But the ability to apply that choice in the moment. To use our sense of agency, and you really brought that out so beautifully, and I want to take that to share a little bit more. There's some of you watching us live. Thank you for joining us live, and the rest of you will be watching the recording. So just wanted to share a little bit about the design of the conference and who it's for and why we think you should attend. To add to what Tiffany shared about the design, accessibility, financial accessibility, and accessibility in terms of the structure of the event, that's very important to us. So it's virtual and at a very affordable price point. And this year, and Tiffany and I, we learn year on year. So we have iterated. So this is, I don't know, like version 6.71. I'm just making it up.
That's not right.
Yeah, so we are very conscious about the topic, and we wanted to make sure that it was something that people could attend regardless of where they are and what roles they play at work. And the other piece around what Brandi, you said about attending this in groups, like bring your coworkers around. And I think that's such a fantastic point you made, because when you share that experience, when you are in an event like this as a group, as your colleagues or teams that work together, then you have the opportunity to go back once you're back in your work environments to take some time to reflect on and sort of crowdsource the collective learnings, and I think, and I've done that in the past, both as a leader and as a team member, and I found extreme value in that. And I think that's in one way in which you can really make the learning sustainable for you. So from a design standpoint, a few tactical call outs. It's midweek, so it's on a Wednesday. It's right a week after International Women's Day. It's at a time from a scheduling perspective, it's accessible to almost all time zones in the US, but perhaps not Hawaii as much. It will be very early in the morning because it's scheduled 11 to 4 New York time. And we hope that we are also able to go across the pond. One of our speakers is from across the pond. So we are hoping that we're able to cover Europe and Africa and, a little bit into India. And I know it's 9:30 at night in India when we start here. So we are mindful of that. And for everyone that registers, you will automatically gain access to the session recording. So you can come back to this and you have access to this through our platform. A couple of other call outs from our shared values standpoint. Both Tiffany and I, inclusion and the whole DEIB is a shared common space for us. And so the platform that we use to host this event, uvcity.com, it's a woman-owned small business that's based in the US, and we've been partnering with them ever since we started this conference. So that's the other piece, and we're very mindful of who we partner with. And a special shout out to you, Brandi, for being our title sponsor. So Real Work Done is our title sponsor, and you're so graciously offering your time and your insights and your expertise through the keynote. So we're so grateful to you for that. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Were you going to add on, Meenakshi?
I just want to say that, if you are someone that doesn't matter whether you're an individual contributor or a leader, anyone that's working in teams, which most of us in the knowledge workspace are, if you have, on top of that, if you have caregiving responsibilities, if you are a middle manager, HR, business, technology leader, or folks that work that work as internal coaches or even external coaches, this is a great event for you, because what we are talking about is, one is about burnout, but one is about understanding burnout, but then we're also looking at what are the different ways in which we can create sustainable ways to recover from burnout. And once we do that, then what are ways in which we can really recognize and prevent burnout? So, there are all these aspects to it. And we think that what you stand to gain from this is a diverse perspective on burnout. And of course, the whole systemic inequities piece of it. Learn tips and techniques that you can use right away to create sustainable burnout-free ecosystems in wherever you may be. And understanding how to navigate burnout in virtual hybrid environments. So that's the main topic for our panel discussion. And then, of course, connect and network with the global community. So those are some call outs as to why we think you should be there.
Yes, and we're really excited to welcome you. If I do say so myself, we make it a very nice, cozy space. And so we're really looking forward to having you, Brandi. Thank you again for being our title sponsor, to all of our speakers. So we'll be highlighting more of them as time goes on, but really, really excited that you spent time with us here to give us a little preview into your keynote and maybe a little mini keynote here as well. So conference, you can still register for it. We will have a link that we'll put in the comments here. If you have any questions on anything that we shared today or about the conference, we're all very active on LinkedIn. Please do reach out. And Brandi, how else can folks reach you if they want to have further discussion too?
Well, I would love for you to connect with me right here on LinkedIn, because this is where we get to have a lot of really great conversations. You can also find my work at realworkdone.com and learn more about my writing and my book there. But reach out to me and be part of the conversation. I think that that's what it's all about. And it's about the connections that we make. And so we don't have to wait for the conference for those to start.
Absolutely
So well
true.
said.
Yes.
So well said. Oh my goodness. Well, I wish we could continue this conversation, but I know we want to respect the time that you are giving us, Brandi. And thank you to everyone who has watched live and who will watch on replay. Feel free to reach out to us with any questions and thoughts. And we look forward to welcoming you on March 15th, 11 to 4 Eastern time at the conference. So we'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Take care.